Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing Raina ever did was look me in the eyes at our dinner table and say, "I can't have kids with you, Quentin. I already have two with my exes," then scroll on her phone like my dream of having a child didn't matter, and my place in her life was just to pay bills, raise her kids, and stay quiet. Here's how it happened. "I can't have kids with you, Quentin. I already have two with my exes." My fork slipped, clattering against the plate, and the sound ricocheted through our kitchen. Raina didn't look up. She kept scrolling, nails tapping her screen in that patient, dismissive rhythm. The sage green walls I painted last July, because she said the color would calm us, suddenly felt like a joke. I watched the blue light shape her cheekbones and waited for a softer follow-up that never came. In one sentence, she revised our marriage into something I maintained, not something we built. Together, equally. My name is Quentin Harrell. I was 38 then, black, raised in St. Louis by a mother who treated bills like storms you survive by planning ahead. I carried that discipline into my job as a senior accountant for a supply company in Charlotte. I liked clean ledgers, early mornings, and routes. I drove a 2012 Honda Accord, kept the service log in the glove box, and folded shirts by color because clutter made my thoughts loud. I've been married to Raina for 3 years, and I've been a father figure to her 2 children for just as long. We lived in a beige 2-story near Steel Creek, close enough to hear the morning buses and far enough to pretend we had quiet. In winter, wind pushed at the back door. In summer, cicadas stitched a loud seam through the evenings. Raina picked the furniture, sleek and modern, and I assembled it, tightening bolts until my wrists ached. She could soften in public and sharpen at home. When she wanted control without a fight, she tapped her nails against whatever surface was nearest, phone glass, countertop, even the steering wheel, until the room surrendered. I noticed stayed quiet. I met her in Atlanta under studio lights, on a reality dating show built around single parents searching for second chances. I was not a parent. I was 34, newly promoted, and convinced my life was a neat spreadsheet missing one vital column. Raina walked out in a red dress and smiled like she had never doubted herself. When the host asked how many children she had, she said, 2, and the audience applauded as if honesty deserved confetti. She added, "They have different fathers, but I want one partner." I pressed my buzzer, the only man who did. After filming, she called every evening for a week, always at 8:10, with the television low behind her voice. She laughed easily, but she also asked pointed questions that sounded like care until they felt like inventory. Income, savings, credit score, whether I owned property, how quickly I could relocate. I labeled it responsibility. I called her direct maturity. My younger sister, Janelle, said Raina sounded efficient, not affectionate. I brushed it off because affection had never paid my rent, and I was tired of being alone. I wanted to be the man she chose, so I kept nodding. Nia was 8 when I met her, serious-eyed, always arranging crayons in rainbow order before she drew. Corbin was 6, talkative, with a habit of humming 3 notes when he felt nervous. Their fathers were names on calendars and occasional transfers, nothing more. Raina introduced me as Mr. Quentin and corrected them if they got too familiar, which I respected at first. I brought board games, took them to Freedom Park, learned teachers' names, and kept spare snacks in my car. The kids warmed to me slowly, and I mistook that slow trust for a permanent place. In it, we married in September 2022 at a lakeside venue outside Concord, under a sky that threatened rain and never delivered it. I paid for most of it, telling myself a ceremony was an investment in stability. 2 months earlier, I had bought our house alone, then added Raina to the deed after the wedding. She cried in the hallway, makeup smudging at the corners, and said she needed to feel safe. I signed because I wanted to be different from my father, the kind of man who stayed. Raina hugged me and whispered partner, and I believed her. That day, the pattern formed quietly. Raina handled conversations. I handled outcomes. If the water heater groaned, I scheduled the plumber. If her car needed tires, I paid, then apologized for being late to pick them up. She would say thank you in a bright tone, then pivot to the next need like gratitude was a brief pause between transactions. I worked overtime during quarterly close, and she called it our season, even though her schedule never changed. When Corbin's company rose, my savings shrank. I told myself that was what families did. I ignored what she carried. That was on me. Tuesdays were my cooking nights. I played old Miles Davis albums, diced onions too small, and lined spices in straight rows. Nia sat at the island, correcting my math aloud like she was supervising a mission. Corbin asked for stories about St. Louis winters and laughed when I described the ice cracking under boots. Raina usually arrived late, heels in hand, perfume sharp, and put her phone face down only long enough to eat. If I mentioned future plans, she smiled without committing, the way someone nods through a sales pitch. That smile carried me farther than it should have. Still, so when she said she was done having children, it did not land like a new decision. It landed like a verdict read aloud. I tried to keep my voice level. We talked about waiting, I said. We talked about timing. Raina pushed her chair back, the legs scraping the floor. I refinished myself. You talked, she corrected. You kept circling it. She carried her half-eaten plate to the sink and set it down with a hard clink. My body is done, she said. End of discussion. Then she left, and our bedroom door clicked shut, neat and final. I sat surrounded by proof of a life I financed and organized. Corbin's lunchbox waited by the fridge, packed with a sandwich cut into rectangles because triangles annoyed him. Nia's homework lay in a neat pile, my notes in the margins. Her water bottle rested by the sink with her name in marker. The overhead bulb flickered, and I remember being 10, watching my mother cry on a couch. She explained my father was not coming back. That night I promised I would be the man who stayed. I kept that vow, but staying had started to feel like surrender. At 3:41 a.m., I sat in my office with the door shut, staring at the North Carolina court website. The house stayed quiet except for the furnace and my keyboard. I completed the divorce petition line by line, as methodical as I was at work. Petitioner, Quentin Isaiah Harrell. Respondent, Raina Patrice Harrell. Seeing our names separated into opposite boxes tightened my stomach. The reason field offered a dull phrase, irreconcilable differences. I wanted to type the real cause, but courts do not reward clarity. I printed the forms anyway, page after page, stacking like a controlled demolition. My phone buzzed with a message from Janelle, my sister. Did you talk to her? She wrote. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, then answered. She said no. I'm filing. The typing bubbles appeared, vanished, returned. Q, slow down, she sent. Give it time. I imagine her in her apartment in University City, hair wrapped, steeping, worrying in that way she had since we were kids. I've given it years. I typed. I can't keep shrinking. I set the phone face down because her concern made my doubt louder, and I needed my doubt silent. For once, the paperwork forced me to inventory our life. I had bought the house before the wedding, then added Raina's name because she cried and said it would make her feel secure. My savings had been $44,000 when we met. It was under 13. The difference lived in orthodontist invoices, therapy bills, school laptops, and the transmission for Raina's SUV. I never resented the spending. I resented the assumption. Raina spoke about our finances when she wanted something, and about your money when I asked for a plan. I paid to keep the household steady. Steadiness became my prison. I slid the signed pages into a manila envelope from the supply drawer, the same drawer where Nia's school photos hid behind sticky notes. I walked down the hallway, holding it like it carried gravity. Raina's door was closed. I listened, heard her breathing even, peaceful afterward. I opened the door when the hinge creaked and set the envelope beside her phone. I considered leaving a note, something gentle, but I had spent years sanding my feelings into shapes. I backed out, shut the door, and went to the guest room clothed. Sleep stayed away. Morning showed up on schedule. At 7:16 a.m., I made scrambled eggs because routine was what I trusted. Corbin sat at the table in his uniform, swinging his legs and humming his 3 nervous notes. Nia was upstairs fixing her hair, taking time the way teenagers do when they want control. The skillet hissed, and the toaster clicked. Then Raina's scream cut through the house. "Quentin!" Corbin froze with his fork midair. "Is Mom okay?" he asked. "She's fine," I told him, and my voice sounded steadier than my hands. I turned off the burner and waited for the storm to break in. Raina burst into the kitchen in a faded t-shirt and sleep shorts, hair wild, eyes swollen. She shook the envelope at me, and papers skated across the table. "What is this?" she demanded. I looked at Corbin. "Backpack," I said. He hesitated, then ran upstairs, footsteps thudding. When the sound vanished, the room tightened. "You're divorcing me?" she asked, voice cracking. I kept my tone even. "I'm ending this because you made my place clear." Her mouth opened, then closed, like she was searching for a better script. She said, "I love you," but it sounded like emergency insurance. Raina wiped her cheeks with the heel of her hand and tried to stand taller. "You can't do this," she said. "We have a family." I felt heat rise, exhausted. "We have a system," I replied. "I keep it running." She accused me of being dramatic. I listed facts instead of feelings. Overtime to clear her credit cards, therapy appointments, meetings, the evenings I sat with Nia until she solved for X. Raina listened like a manager hearing complaints. Then she said the line that ended my doubt. "I need you," she whispered. "We need you. Today." I left before my anger learned to talk. I drove past the elementary school, past the corner store with the bright mural, and into a park lot near Lake Wiley. I kept the engine running and stared at the steering while seeing I had restitched myself. My phone buzzed again and again, calls, texts, more calls. I did not open them. The notifications stacked like invoices. Near noon, I drove home for clothes and documents, planning a hotel and a longer plan after that. When I stepped inside, the air smelled stale, like someone had been crying for hours. Raina was on her knees in the living room, tissues scattered on the rug, face swollen and blotchy. She looked up as if I was the last solid object in a flood. "Please," she said, breath hitching. "I can't do this alone. The bills, the kids, everything." Her words came fast, panicked, practical. When I turned toward the stairs, she grabbed my pant leg. "Wait," she cried. "I'll do it. I'll have your baby. We can start now. Just don't leave." I looked down and understood the offer was fear wearing the mask of devotion. Still, it hooked my hope. Every instinct told me to leave, but the promise I made at 10 still lived in me, stubborn. I wanted a child who carried my last name, my history, my chance to do things differently. I also wanted to believe Raina meant it. That desire made me soft at the worst time. "All right," I said, and the words tasted. "But things change. No more treating me like payroll." Raina nodded quickly, swearing she would do anything. I did not help her up. I walked upstairs, put my suitcase in the closet, and told myself hope was courage, not denial. Raina treated the months that followed like a contract she planned to complete. She downloaded an ovulation app, set reminders, and announced schedule with the same tone she used for oil changes. When I tried to make it tender, she stiffened, then relaxed only when she remembered why she had agreed. I told myself discomfort was normal. I told myself love could grow after commitment. Nia watched everything with quiet, sharp attention, and Corbin asked why Raina cried in the bathroom some mornings. I dodged questions and pretended we were fine. Our son, Mercer Isaiah Harrell, arrived on a humid May morning in 2023 after a long night of lights and clipped instructions. When he cried, something in me unclenched. He had my wide-set eyes and my stubborn chin, and I held him like I was holding the future I had postponed. Raina smiled for photos, then asked about insurance forms before the medication wore off. I should have been alarmed. Instead, I focused on Mercer's fingers curling around my thumb, the grip trusting. That tiny trust became my center, and the rest of the house started orbiting around it. I opened a $529 account the week Mercer received his Social Security card. I built a budget with columns for daycare, medical, savings, and the kind of school I never had. I took on consulting work during tax season and stopped buying anything that did not serve a purpose. Raina praised my drive when it benefited her, then complained when I refused a weekend trip she wanted. Nia needed shoes. Corbin needed project supplies. A tablet broke, and another appeared on the list. I paid, but I started noticing how requests replaced gratitude, like the house could not tolerate stillness. 3 years after that dinner, I buckled Mercer into his car seat on a clear January morning. He was 3, serious about buttons, proud of his polo with a Hawthorne Academy crest. "New classroom?" he asked. "New classroom," I answered. At the curb, Raina's 2 children waited for the public bus, backpacks sagging, eyes half awake. Nia was 14, posture guarded. Corbin was 12, hoodie cinched tight. Raina stepped onto the porch with her arms crossed and said, "So Mercer gets private school, and mine get Westmec." Her voice carried accusation, not curiosity. I shut the door, silent again. Raina followed me along the walkway, heels scraping concrete. "That school is falling apart," she said. "The roof leaks. Classes are packed." I kept my eyes on the driveway because I did not trust my face. "They're fine," I said. She shook her head. "You know their fathers don't send enough." The sentence landed hard. "Then their fathers should step up," I replied. Raina's mouth tightened. "You're doing this to hurt me." "I'm doing this for my child," I said, and heard my voice turn colder than I intended. Behind us, the bus hissed to a stop, doors folding open. Nia glanced at Mercer's car seat, then away. Corbin watched the pavement, shoulders rounded. I remembered painting his science fair board at the dining table, both of us smeared with glue, laughing when the cat stepped in glitter. I remembered Nia falling asleep on the couch during a thunderstorm, her head on my shoulder because Raina was out running errands. Those memories should have softened me. They did not. They sharpened my anger because I had given stability and still remained optional. As the bus pulled away, guilt rose and I pressed it down. That habit would cost me later. That night Raina ambushed me in the hallway the moment I came home from work. Mercer was at my mother's house, spared from tension. "You are disgusting," she said, trembling with fury. "Playing favorites with children." I set my briefcase down slowly, controlling my breathing the way a counselor taught me after a panic spell at 26. "They are not my children," I said. "I've supported them for years. Their fathers exist." Raina followed me toward the kitchen. "You're punishing them because you resent me," she insisted. I turned and said, "I'm protecting the child I begged you for." Raina's face went pale, then hard. "That is not fair," she said, folding her arms like a shield. "It's accurate," I replied. "You agreed to Mercer because you feared losing what I provided." The words were blunt, and I hated that part of me enjoyed their impact. Upstairs, a door shut, then a muffled sob from Nia's room. My chest tightened, but I did not comfort her. I told myself boundaries mattered, which was true and also convenient. I washed my hands too long, staring at the water like it could rinse away what I was becoming. Right then, the months that followed were a quiet war. Raina spoke only in logistics, pickups, payments, calendar reminders. Nia stopped asking for homework help. Corbin avoided eye contact, answering with one-word replies that made the house feel hollow. Mercer sensed the tension and started waking at 2 a.m., calling for me with a frightened voice. I began taking late walks after everyone slept, earbuds in, jazz low, counting my breath to stay steady. I also started journaling, not for inspiration, but to keep my thoughts from circling the same questions. On paper, I sounded calmer than I felt. One Thursday, after Mercer fell asleep clutching my shirt, I walked into the bedroom and set a brown file envelope on the bed. Raina looked from her phone, and her expression shifted before I spoke. "Not again," she said. "Yes," I answered. "Again, and this time I'm leaving." She sat up, eyes narrowing. "You're leaving me with 3 kids." I corrected her without raising my voice. 2. Mercer stays with me. Raina surged to her feet. "You cannot take my son." I told her I had met counsel, gathered records, and was prepared to let a judge decide. In court, Raina's anger arrived fast, then turned into pleading, hunting for a tone that worked. "We can fix this," she said. "You're overreacting." I asked what I had swallowed for years. "When did you ask about my day? When did you plan anything for us? When did you do something kind without attaching a bill?" She started to answer, then stopped, eyes darting like she was searching for an easier explanation. That pause told me more than any apology. I felt sadness, detached, like I was studying my own life from a distance and accepting the results. No anger, just certainty. Over the next weeks, I met my attorney, Luther Cade, in an office near Uptown where the waiting room smelled like copier toner. He did not ask for drama. He asked for proof. I brought daycare receipts, pediatric summaries, school emails, and calendar screenshots showing I handled weekday mornings while Raina worked late networking. I hated turning care into exhibits, but I hated uncertainty more. Raina found legal aid and demanded joint custody, saying a mother deserved time. Luther kept his voice calm. Courts follow patterns, he told me. Show the pattern. So I did, one record at a time. Court day arrived in late October, windy, the kind of weather that makes every building look tired. The security line moved slowly. Belts and keys landed in plastic trays. I sat on one side with Luther. Raina sat on the other with her attorney, jaw tight, eyes bright with rage. Judge Talley, silver-haired and blunt, read through our filings and asked questions that sounded simple but carried weight. Who handled daycare drop-off? Who attended appointments? Who arranged sick day coverage? I answered with records because feelings had not protected me before, and they would not protect Mercer now. When Raina's attorney requested joint physical custody, Judge Talley asked for evidence contradicting the records. The attorney spoke about motherhood and bonding. Judge Talley listened, then returned to the file. The pattern shows the father has been the consistent weekday caregiver and stable provider, she said. Then she read the order aloud. Primary physical custody of Mercer Isaiah Harrell to the father. Visitation to the mother on weekends, plus alternating holidays. Raina's breath caught. Her attorney whispered. Raina shook her head, but she had no documents to offer. The gavel fell, and the sound felt final. In a cold room. Outside, we stood by separate cars while wind pushed grit across the lot. Raina held the papers like they were written in another language. Every weekend, she said, voice thin. I nodded once. Then she flipped to the settlement pages and froze. The agreement gave her half the home, equity, and a portion of my retirement contributions. You're giving me this, she said, suspicious. Half, I corrected. Sell it or buy me out. Raina's eyes narrowed. Why are you being generous? You hate me. I answered, I don't hate you. I want freedom, and I'm willing to pay for it. The consequences did not arrive with fireworks. They came as overdue notices and small failures. The roof leaked over the hallway closet, and the contractor wanted a deposit Raina did not have. Corbin School sent reminders about lunch balances. Mia needed a laptop replacement, and the district offered a waiting list. Raina called the fathers often. They answered less. One promised to send money Friday, then vanished for another month. She picked up weekend shifts and kept smiling online. Reality tightened. I heard about it through the kids, who spoke in fragments during Mercer's weekend handoffs. 4 months after the decree, Mercer and I moved into a townhouse in Matthews with 2 bedrooms and a small fenced yard. I painted his room a soft blue and put dinosaur decals along the baseboard, letting him choose the placement like it mattered because to him it did. I built a bookshelf on a Saturday and sanded it smooth while he napped, sawdust on my arms, music low. My own room stayed plain, bed, dresser, one framed photo of Mercer grinning with frosting on his lip. I learned I needed less space to breathe and more room to be quiet. On an April Saturday, sunlight broke through weeks of rain, and I took Mercer to Squirrel Lake Park. He chose the swings, gripping the chains with determined hands. I pushed, and he laughed, bright and unguarded. Then he dragged his shoes in the mulch and slowed himself. He looked back, serious. Dad, are you happy now? I stopped and knelt. What makes you ask? He counted on his fingers. You smile more. You don't yell. You make pancakes. My throat tightened. Yes, I said. I'm happy. He nodded once, satisfied. He hugged neck and said, I like it peaceful here. I ran into Raina the next year at a Whole Foods in South Park. Mercer sat in the cart arguing for chocolate cereal with marshmallows, convinced shapes made it better. I mentioned sugar grams, and he frowned as if math was personal. Then I heard my name. Raina stood behind a cart with Nia and Corbin nearby, both taller than I remembered. Raina looked tired, hair pulled back, sweatshirt loose. How have you been? She asked carefully. Good, I said. The silence stretched. She said, I wish things were different. I answered, I don't, and my honesty ended the conversation. Quietly, weekend handoffs became the only times I stood close to Raina. We met in parking lots or at my mother's driveway, keeping voices low and Mercer out of arguments. Raina tried small talk, then slid into complaint, then into blame. I stayed brief. Mercer ate. Mercer slept. Preschool pictures Friday. Nia and Corbin hovered near the car, speaking in fragments about a leaky ceiling and a teacher quitting. I listened without rescuing. Part of me wanted to fix everything out of habit. Another part remembered the cost and kept my hands in my pockets. Mercer waved, and the meeting ended. A year later, my cousin DeAndre invited me to his bachelor night in Uptown. Wings, bad karaoke, and laughter. He pulled me into a quieter booth and asked about his fiancée, Corinne, who had 2 children from a previous marriage. Is that going to be a problem? He asked. I asked one question back. Do you want kids of your own? He nodded. Then you need a clear answer. Not a vague maybe, I said. Have the hard conversation before the wedding. Listen for hesitation. Believe it. DeAndre went quiet, then thanked me like I had handed him a map. Driving home after midnight, I thought about the man I had been when I met Raina. Lonely, proud, eager to be chosen, willing to confuse attention with love. I replayed moments I had minimized. The inventory questions, the way gratitude disappeared as soon as the next need appeared, the way she treated my hopes like background noise. I also admitted my part. I avoided confrontation because I wanted the story to work. I stayed quiet to keep peace, then resented her for the peace I volunteered to protect. It was a childish bargain, and I paid in years. Anyway, for Mercer's 5th birthday, I kept it small. My mother, Janelle, 2 cousins, a backyard grill, cupcakes from a bakery near Independence Boulevard. Mercer wore a paper crown all afternoon and declared himself King Mercer, ordering everyone to dance to his favorite song. I danced, even when I felt ridiculous, because joy was the point. After everyone left, I sat on the porch steps listening to crickets and sprinklers. My phone buzzed with a message from Raina. Happy birthday to Mercer. Nothing else. I replied, if this story hit a nerve, drop one word in the comments. Peace. Because sometimes the strongest comeback is walking away quietly and never paying for disrespect again. I used to think a good man proved himself by enduring. Now I think a good man proves himself by choosing what is healthy and staying consistent after the choice. I did not win. I did not expose Raina, humiliate her, or chase applause. I simply stopped financing a life that refused to include my heart. Mercer and I wake in a quiet house, eat pancakes, and walk to the mailbox without dread. Sometimes guilt visits wearing Nia's and Corbin's faces, and I sit with it until it loosens. Peace is not loud, but it exists. The end.